Hello and welcome to the section on layers. In this lesson, you're going to learn what layers are, the 7 types of layers, and the 4 types of layer customizations. Layers, in my opinion, are the most important tool in Photoshop. So what exactly are layers? Well, layers allow you to stack different graphics or images via layers, and they provide a method by allowing you to creatively adjust your artwork, thereby allowing you the flexibility to achieve your creative vision. Layers are also independent of each other, and another way to look at layers is to think of them as individual canvases. Each canvas or layer receives pixels that you add to it. So if I create a new layer or canvas, I can apply paint to it, and it's not going to affect any other layer on it. If I now turn this layer off, we can see that the paint is gone and wasn't applied to any other layer. But if I create a new layer and wish to add paint to it, but I end up choosing the wrong layer, then the paint will not be added to it. It's actually added to the layer or canvas that was selected. So it's important to make sure you have the layer you want to work on selected. Now at this point, I'm probably going a little fast, but remember this is just an overview, and in this section and many more to come, we will be using layers a lot. So don't worry if this doesn't make sense yet. There's a lot to learn about layers, and we're going to take each part of the layers one step at a time. So let's go ahead and look at all the different types of layers and customizations. So this particular file can be downloaded from this lesson if you'd like to follow along and play with all the different layers. Now make sure you have your layers panel visible, but if you don't see it, just go up to Windows, scroll down, and select Layers to activate that panel. Okay, I'm going to bring my layers panel over here just so we have easy access to it and we can see it a little bit better, and then we're going to go over some of the different tools and features and options we have with our layers panel so we know where everything is located. The first thing you're going to want to do is maybe increase the size of your thumbnails. Right now I have my thumbnails set to the largest setting, so if we click on this little icon right here, scroll down and select panel options, you can choose different size thumbnails. So if I go ahead and click OK, you're going to notice this background layer gets smaller. So personally, I like them as large as possible. So I'm going to go back and apply the largest thumbnail. So if you want to change that, you can do that. You'll also notice there's some other tools and features in here as well to help you manage and work on your particular layers. But there's also a hidden menu within the layers panel as well. And if you right click on a layer, doesn't matter which layer, you're going to see another drop down menu with additional tools and options. Now some of these options are located in this menu as well. Personally, I just prefer to right click and select my options from this menu. All right, let's take a look at some of the other options within our layers panel. Right up here we have a filter. So this allows you to search your layers based on the kind of layer or by the name. And you can either select that from the drop down menus here, or you can click on these little icons here to filter for pixel layers, adjustment layers, text layers, shape layers, and smart object layers. And you can also turn off the filter as well with this option here. Now, I do recommend renaming your layers as you're working and to name them according to what that layer is all about. So if I go inside of this layer group here, we can see some additional layers, and this is the headline right here. What are layers? So to change the name of a layer, all you have to do is double click on it, give it a new name, click enter or return, and then it will rename that layer for you. Then let's say you have hundreds and hundreds of layers and you need to find a specific layer to work on to either re-edit it, to move it, or whatever it is you need to do with that particular layer. Well, what you can do is come up to name, type in a name, and then it will start to show all the layers with that name, and you can narrow it down to the exact name of a layer and will only show that particular layer. Now here's where you can turn it off and re-show all the layers, but maybe you want to come back to that specific layer at a later time. Just turn it back on. Or you can just come up here and select kind, and it will reset the filter to show everything. Okay, so just below that, we have a couple other options here. We have a drop-down menu here. We have an opacity option and a fill option. We're going to go over these three different options in the types of layer customizations. Okay, so just below that, we have an option to lock our layers, and there are a total of 5 different ways to do that. And my favorite is the last one, which is basically we'll apply all the locks. And the reason why I like to use this is because maybe I'm working on a specific document and I want to make sure that I don't move any layers. If I try and click and move this layer, you can see it's not moving because I have a lock on it. If I take that lock off, then I can click and move that layer where I want it. And it just makes it easier and nice to know that I can work on a document without accidentally moving a layer. Okay, so down here in the bottom right, we have some additional options for customizing our layers. We can create grouped layers, regular layers, and we can also delete our layers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this panel back. And I just want to show you a couple quick ways to work with your layers. Now, next to each one of these layers, you're going to see a little icon. Kind of looks like a little eyeball. So basically what this does is it will show or hide the layers. So if I click on this icon, it's going to hide what are layers and show the layers below it. Then if I turn this layer off, it's going to show the one below it. The other thing we can do is we can rearrange the layers to put them in a new order. So for example, I can take this layer and put it above this layer. And now because the icon is turned on, or the layer is turned on, you can see that layer and not the layers below it. If I turn this one off, then we see that one as well. So that's how you rearrange, show, and hide your layers. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the 7 types of layers. So here we go. We have pixel layers, adjustment layers, smart object layers, shape layers, type layers, and 2 more. We have background layers and grouped layers. That's a lot of different types of layers. So let's go over each one briefly. And again, we'll go over some of these in more detail in an upcoming lesson. Let's go ahead and start with background layers first. A background layer is a special kind of layer which is always located at the bottom of all other layers. It also comes locked, and there are limitations on what you can do with this particular background. You can't rearrange it, you can't delete items on it, and you can't move any contents within it. And its sole purpose is to be, well, the background for the rest of your document. When you open a new file, it will be located on a background layer, and you don't want to work directly on this background layer. You don't want to edit this background layer. Instead, you want to use adjustment layers or new layers to begin editing your image. Even when you create a new document, you can specify the color of that background, and when you create the new document, you will receive a background layer as the default layer when you start a new document, and as you can see, it's automatically locked. Now you can paint on this particular layer, this canvas, but there's not much else you can do with it. Now if you want to convert this background layer to a regular layer, you can double click on that layer, give it a new name, click OK, and then that lock will disappear, and then you can use it like a normal layer. And then we have grouped layers, which is a bunch of other layers, well, grouped together into a folder or a category of other layers. So right here we can see a little folder next to each name of the grouped layers. And within that are additional layers, this is the layer, and additional grouped layers. If we click on the little arrows, we can expand the grouped layer to see all the other layers inside of it. So again, grouped layers are a way to manage a lot of layers and organize them in a way so that it's easy to find exactly what you need when you need it. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at pixel layers. So a pixel layer is a layer that contains, well, pixels. It could be an image or it could be a graphic. So that is a pixel layer. Even the icon itself is a pixel layer because it contains pixels. All right, let's take a look at the next type of layer, which is an adjustment layer. So an adjustment layer allows you to work non-destructively, so you don't have to work on that background layer of your original image. So let's take a look at that. So here we have a pixel layer. Then we have an adjustment layer here, which is added by applying one of the many adjustment layers from clicking on this icon here. And this particular adjustment layer is called Levels. So that's the tool being used to edit the image at this time. And you can also access the adjustment layers by going up to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and then you can select from those adjustment layer options from here. So here's how the adjustment layer works. We can see a little icon right here, and we also see a layer mask thumbnail. I'm going to explain the mask in one of the other sections here. But for now, let's take a look at this adjustment layer. So we have a little icon right here, and if we double click on it, we're going to get the properties dialog box for this particular adjustment tool. Then from here, we can make adjustments to our image according to our creative vision. And then at a later time, when we save this file as a PSD file and come back tomorrow, next week, next year, we can double click on this icon to come back and make adjustments to it later on, because maybe we made a mistake and we want to fine-tune the edit that we did. That's an adjustment layer. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at the next type of layer, which is a smart object layer. A smart object layer is a layer, whether it's an image or a graphic, that contains other information. So right here is our smart object, and we have a little icon in the bottom right of this image, which we didn't have in previous images. So this little image, it kind of looks like this little icon right here, and this little icon lets you know this is a smart object layer. So if we double click on this little area right here, we're going to open up the contents of that layer in a new window, and we're going to see that there are layers within this document. So if I turn this layer off, we can see the original color of the image. Then if I save that with Command or Control and the letter S, close it out, and go back, we can see that the image has been updated with that change that I made, because it's containing a different file within the layer. And when you make adjustments to that file and then save it, it will update in the original smart object layer. All right, let's take a look at shape layers. And a shape layer is nothing more than a shape that is created from one of the shape tools. And this is what a shape layer looks like. It's going to have a thumbnail, just like our pixel layers, and then this little icon right here that represents the shape icon, which is this right here. And then we have type layers, which are going to contain your text. So this is a type layer, and you can see that by this little icon right here that looks like a T, as well as some of these other layers as well that make up the document are also type layers. Okay, so those are the 7 types of layers. And in addition to those types of layers, we also have 4 types of layer customization. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. Okay, so the first one are layer styles. And you can see layer styles in some of the layers and the other group layers as well. And they are denoted by this little menu of text right here with the little icon next to it. And we know that when we click on it, we can turn on or off that particular element. So if you take a look at the FX right here, when I click on it, you can see it's changing, and that's because I applied a color overlay to this pixel layer. You can also apply layer styles to text layers as well as images, and it's basically allowing you to add a stroke, drop shadow, color overlays, and much more. If we come down here, we can see this little FX icon. If we click on it, we can see all of the different layer styles that we can apply to a layer. We can also access the layer dialog box by double clicking on one of these items here, and then you're going to get this layer style dialog box, and then you can make adjustments to your layer by adding one of these types of layer styles. Now we do have another section on layer styles that will go over all of the different types of layer styles available, and this is one of the documents that you will be working on. So right now we have our text layer, and if I turn on the layer effects, you can see the before and after. And this is basically, and this particular layer style includes 7 different elements, and you're going to learn how to apply these and adjust them for your own artwork. So you're going to find this layer style section in the graphic design section of this course. So check that out if you want to learn more about layer styles. Then we have layer masks, and a layer mask will allow you to fine-tune your edits. Now, if you did the section on ACR, you know that we can use local adjustment brushes to apply edits in specific locations. Well, the layer mask allows you to do something very similar. When you apply an adjustment layer, it automatically includes a layer mask, which is represented by this rectangle right here. Then when you make your adjustments to that particular adjustment layer, you can then come into the layer mask and add or remove parts of that edit. So in a way, it allows you to apply your edits locally. We're going to learn more about local adjustment layers in the next section. Okay, so next we have blending modes, which is a very cool and fun type of customization that you can apply to your layers. So here we have a black and white image as well as a orange graphic. And when I apply a blending mode from this drop-down menu, it will blend that layer with the layer below it. So there are a ton of different blending modes within this drop-down menu here, and we have an entire section that's going to explain how to use the blending modes and what each one of these does. So if you want to learn more about blending modes, check out the blending modes section. Then we have opacity and flow. So opacity allows you to adjust the layers to increase or decrease the opacity, and right now I have a pixel layer that is turned on, but we can't see it, and that's because the opacity is set to 0%. So this is another way to customize your layers to help you achieve your creative vision. Okay, just below opacity, we have one other option, and it's called fill. And when you adjust it, you're probably wondering what the difference is because it looks like it's doing the exact same thing. And in a way it is, because what it's doing is affecting the transparency of the layer. And that's exactly what opacity does as well. It's affecting the transparency of that layer. So here's how it's different. If we turn on this text layer here, we can see we have a layer style applied to it in red. So when I adjust the opacity of this text layer, we can see that the text and the stroke are both becoming much more transparent. But here's the difference between opacity and fill. When I lower the fill, we can see it's lowering the transparency of the text only and not the stroke. So that's the difference between opacity and fill. Both will affect the transparency of the layer, but fill will not affect the layer styles of that layer. Okay, so those are the 4 types of layer customizations. What I recommend doing is grabbing this file and going through each one of the different layers and becoming more familiar with them. And then in the next lesson, I'm going to show you how to take different layers and to align them.